Welcome to Mother's Narrative Network. Before we begin, please like and subscribe for more daily uploads. Hope you enjoy today's video. I'm trying to think back. I'm sure I've had a couple of other mysterious experiences. Oh, I can think of another nice one. I was lying in my bed when I heard my dad's voice, clear as day, say, "There's my lovely daughter." He had passed away 5 years ago. I recently viewed a house with my sister. It was a 4-bedroom, very old cottage. House felt fine except when I walked into one of the bedrooms. I will mention here I have form for picking up on spirits. I did in this case, strongly. It was a male presence linked to that bedroom and it felt dreadfully sad. I told my sister as soon as we left the house. After the viewing, my sister inquired with the estate agent as to why vendor was selling house. After just 2 years of owning, an estate agent admitted that he wanted to get away from the memories that son had died in the house. Suffice to say, she didn't buy it. I was about 9 or 10, and I heard a scratching on my bedroom window. It woke me up. Ad went on and on. Eventually I built up my nerve and opened the curtain. It was the cat. She'd been locked out. My bedroom was over the dining room that had a bay window. Love a woo thread. Lived in an old spooky house as a student. Formerly owned by undertakers. A friend stayed over in lounge and said she had most dreadful night sleep, felt like someone was touching her and whispering to her all night. Said friend was a science student and most woo person you could meet. Never liked being in house on my own, and my 5 other housemates all used to cram into my room to talk, as it was the least eerie room. It was an extension and wasn't part of the original house. Definitely was an atmosphere in that house. In my early 30s, I had this freaky, realistic dream where someone told me that I had to tell my granddad that his sister had died. It was so real but very odd, as my granddad had been estranged from his sister for over 50 years, as he didn't like her, and I'd never met the woman. Didn't think anything of it until 3 days later I was chatting to my mum on the phone, and at the end of the call she said, "Oh, by the way, your great-aunt died 3 days ago, not that you knew her." It was all very odd. My friend's mum passed away young, when my friend was still a teenager living at home. The night she died, the landline in their house rang. My friend answered it and said he could hear an open line, but nobody spoke, so he hung up. He dialed 1471, and the number was his own landline. I am a skeptic, but I've also had things happen to me that I can't explain. Do enjoy a spooky story though. I don't believe I ghosts, but I've had a couple of experiences that I put down to my mind playing tricks on me. Others may disagree though, so I'll post them here for fun. The first was when I was about 13, staying over a friend's house. She had a beanbag across from her bed that had a teddy sat on it. I woke up in the night to see a boy of about 8 sitting on the beanbag, looking back at me. He had blonde hair and was wearing a green t-shirt and jeans. We locked eyes and then I watched as he slowly disappeared and I could see the teddy again. Only when he was gone did I get frightened and hid under the covers and went back to sleep. The second was when I was a little older, maybe 15, walking down the stairs at home and was shoved from behind. I grabbed the railing to keep from falling and, assuming it had been my brother, span round to shout at him about how bloody dangerous that was, and no one was there. That one is a little more tricky to explain, but I think it was my mind misinterpreting some kind of nerve spasm, or something along those lines. It seems more likely than being shoved by a ghost. A few years ago, I was worrying about something, so much so that it was affecting my sleep. One night, I was lying awake and I suddenly felt as though I was being hugged, although nothing was touching me. It's hard to explain, like a feeling of comfort covered me and I felt warm and a sense of relief. Then a man's voice said, "You'll be all right." I know it wasn't spoken aloud, it was more like telepathy. Only I could have heard it. My brother, who is a devout Christian, says it was God. I am open to any ideas, I just know that it definitely happened. This was around 10 years ago. My husband and kids had gone to a local weaving shed museum. Our town was rife with cotton mills in the early 1900s. We were in the weaving shed with all 300 machines on, and it was deafening. At the end of the demo we were walking out of that area, and I was the last person to leave the room. As I turned around to walk out, I felt a finger prod me quite hard in the shoulder. There is no way I imagined it. We lived a few hundred meters away in a house on a terrace row that would have been built for the workers, and every now and then around 4 in the morning you would hear someone slowly walking up the street in heavy footwear. Stop, then knock, a tap, then walk and tap again. Maybe a ghostly knocker-upper. 40 years ago, I lived in a house share with 2 other young people, who I will call Joanna and Freddie, outside a village southwest of Newbury. We felt lucky. It was a beautifully converted lodge house, at the foot of a wooded hill on the way to a fishing lake. It was one of those houses historically sold off by the local estate to pay death duties. The new young owners had moved abroad to work for a few years, and we were 6 months into a 2-year let. We all got on together and the lodge was very comfortable. We sat out in the garden that first summer listening to the birds in the treetops, watching the squirrels and the rabbits on the nearby tracks. We cooked together, drank wine, watched videos and chilled, with friends round to stop over most weekends. The odd car passing by on the lane to the fishing lake, that sparkled in the distance when the sun caught it, was the only interruption. You get the picture. It was a dream home, a sanctuary, as we developed our very different careers in our 20s. There was nothing sinister about the house, it was just light, fresh and warm. A tranquil and idyllic place. During the October, the weather changed as it normally does, bringing the remnants of the Atlantic storms round to the UK. I was working in the office in Newbury that afternoon and quite a storm had kicked up, with high winds and deep black clouds. My colleagues and I sat there working, while watching all sorts of debris blowing around outside the huge office windows, listening to this tall modern block creaking in the wind. Then the power failed and we were all sent home. The drive was 20 minutes, but as I drove there it was clear the power cut had affected the outlying villages too. There was no power at home, so we made plans while we still had daylight to find some candles, lay the fire and prepare some supper with a gas bottle stove. It was very cozy, and after spending the evening round the fire we decided to turn in early. Waking up on that Saturday morning was being in a different place. Wall-to-wall sunshine, no wind and the promise of a lovely but crisp weekend ahead. Another timeless weekend stretching ahead of us. I went downstairs to the kitchen to find the back door wide open, and leaves all over the floor, in some places piled up high into piles. My house shares denied leaving the door open. It was clearly locked from the inside, dark heavy black ironwork bolts. We had not opened the door all night, and I always check doors last thing. As I went to close the door I looked out, up the hill through the beech trees and saw movement. Lots of movement coming from the trees. I stepped out cautiously to get a better look and plain as day several tall thick beech trunks were rippling. I was aware that my house share, let's call her Joanna, was by then standing next to me, jaw dropped and like me completely mesmerized. We watched as what I can only describe as armies of squirrels and undeterminable shapes were scampering down the sides of these trees. There must have been several hundred of the things. Squirrels and larger dark gray, diamond shapes, which we could not identify. It was weird and they seemed to disappear when they got to the ground. I then nudged Joanna, because over to my right was a large fox, just sitting upright, in the morning sun, watching these things. Eventually all the animals dispersed, the scampering stopped and we were in the still morning air once more. We set about clearing up the leaves in the kitchen. As we moved the leaves we saw tiny flashes of light, like the sort that a sparkler shoots out. Then we noticed mini tornadoes of leaves swirling round inside above the kitchen floor about 4 to 5 feet high, a foot wide, just little swirling columns of a few leaves for 2 or 3 seconds, but no sound and no fear within us at all. Just really odd. Later that day, and over the next 3 weeks, a number of things happened. My father's dog, which had been missing for 2 years, returned home. Joanna's brother's progressive cancer had disappeared. My sister finally got pregnant, after nearly 7 years of trying. I picked up a call on the landline from an auction house. An old book collection Freddie had inherited, and had been getting valued, turned out to contain a rare edition, which he eventually sold, raising enough for half the price of his first house. He had been on the point of just giving the books away. Most of all, we continued to live in the lodge house for the remainder of the let, and are still close friends today. 2 of our children got married. The fox turned out to be a vixen and would lay under the beech trees with her cubs, about 20 feet from the kitchen door, none of which were wary of us. I stayed in touch with the couple who owned the house. The year they returned to reoccupy the house, they woke up one October morning to find the vixen curled up on a bed of leaves in the footwell outside the back door, having drifted off to sleep for the last time. I had a friend pass the summer we graduated high school. Shortly after her passing, I was laying in my driveway one evening looking up at the stars. I saw a white owl fly over, lived in California, US. The next morning, dawn, I was walking to a friend's house. Friend had been friends with late friend as well. There was no one in sight. An empty field was on my left and a park on my right. It sounded as if I heard my name in my late friend's voice. I continued walking and brushed it off, and thought I was just hearing things, as it was so early and no one was around. Then, clear as day, there was my name again. Stopped me dead in my tracks. Not a soul in sight. I got to my friend's house and told her what happened and told her of the white owl. She said she had seen a white owl the previous night as well. She said she had encounters since our friend passed as well. Another incident, I was at work and a co-worker and I were talking in the lunchroom and the water turned on all by itself. There isn't too much to that one, but I thought it was a little freaky. When I was about 9, my dad said he woke to my yelling for him to come upstairs, parents downstairs, kids upstairs. He said he came into the room, and I had my bedroom windows wide open sitting on the sill, saying my sister was telling me to come out to join her. I have a memory of my sister in the street outside holding a balloon she'd gotten from a party, but she was in her bed. I did sleepwalk when I was young, but that was the one where I was in danger. My cousin's family have a story that they were away staying in a friend's big country house, and the adults were all having drinks in a room. My cousin, who was about 3 or 4 at the time, came into the room telling them that there was a lady asking her to come away with her. The story has been sitting in my mind all my life. Strange, all the child stories of being asked to come away with someone. When I was about 11 and my sister was 17, we were home, in our parents' end of terrace house. We were on our own and it was quiet. The house is on a quiet road. I remember we were standing on the landing and suddenly, we heard children's voices signing the line, "Ring a ring o' roses," and then it was quiet again. As it was end of terrace, in our room we could hear the TV from next door on and can still hear when the neighbor children cry, but it's always clearly through a wall, like it sounds muffled. This was as clear as day. It was silent and then the singing and then silent again. There were no kids playing outside or anything. The only thing I could ever think was that next door turned on a TV or radio, and then almost immediately turned it off again. But like I say, it was so clear. Like it was next to us. My parents still live there and I still sleep in the room with the connecting wall to the other house when I stay, and I've never heard anything else like it in the 20 years since. I also teach in a school that dates to the Victorian times, and come over summer, I was the only one in one of the buildings, and I heard children's footsteps running through the hall, but that was less convincing. Not long after my cat died, I heard him purring as clear as anything. It was a great comfort. My ex and I also went to stay in a cottage in Herefordshire years ago, and I felt the entire time this suffocating feeling of dread, like I was being watched. I still did have a nice time, but especially in the quiet fields nearby and in the evening, I just felt as though something was there. I didn't sleep well and felt uneasy through the night. He felt the same, and he was absolutely not one to buy into that. We got back one evening and the gate we had locked was unlocked. Almost certainly, just the owner of the place popping by or something, but on top of the feeling of being watched, we just packed up and left a night early. Driving through the winding country lanes in the dark, I didn't feel at all safe until we pulled onto the nearest A road. I used to babysit 3 children who lived in a massive house. Think 4 huge floors with random corridors going off to other rooms, interlocking rooms, cellar. I used to sit in the kitchen snug where they lived, and I used to have to steel myself to go and check on the sleeping kids. Up 3 staircases past a wall-to-floor mirror halfway up. I was terrified of accidentally looking in the mirror and seeing something. I would run up as fast as possible and down the same way before getting back to the cozy kitchen. Same if I needed to use the bathroom. Never saw anything, it was probably just my overactive imagination, but it felt creepy. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed the video. Before you go, please like, comment, and subscribe for more daily uploads.